Okay, so I've finished the cutting for this design. If I'd have chosen to use these designs, equally I could have, you can position those in exactly the same way. You can either do them centrally or you can do them using the marks to position them as the pattern suggests. You can actually put the flower designs more or less any way you want them, as long as they're not right in the edge of the bag. And you're going to cut those in exactly the same way. So you're going to attach those on the right side of your faux leather using your decorator's tape, and then you're going to cut them. You have to do this freehand because of all the curves, and you're going to cut them out, each one of them. You can use a central one if you wanted to, just put it in the middle. Doesn't have to be on either side. This is very much your choice. You don't need to see me cutting that one out simply because you've already seen me cutting the other two. So literally it's the same technique as this one, just not straight lines. So I'm just going to remove the template, and I've kept all the little pieces from out of this design, and I will, so you can see that's all been cut out. Looks quite pretty actually, doesn't it? Just like that. But we're going to start with this one because this is the one we've started with, and I'm going to show you how we attach our faux leather. So now I'm going to find my chosen applique. I need to go that way. And basically what I need is a piece of faux leather that's big enough to cover the design. So I'm just going to chop that piece off. I'm going to turn it over and just make sure, that there's no areas where there's nothing showing, and that's fine. We're going to take that out of the way. Now I'm going to spray some spray adhesive on the back of this. So what I need is a piece of paper to put underneath, because if you spray adhesive all over the place, believe me, it goes everywhere. Let's just grab those last little bits of. So I'm just going to use my spray adhesive, and I've run out of 505, so I'm using Stick and Spray, which is exactly the same thing. This one's from Crafter's Companion, but because I've got this, I haven't bothered to get any more of the 505. I do actually prefer the 505 if I'm honest. So I'm just going to give it a good squirt, and I've put the paper underneath so that didn't go straight through and onto my cutting mat. And then I'm just going to position my piece of faux leather that I'm using for my applique right sides down, so that it's basically I'm spraying onto the wrong side of my exterior fabric, and I'm placing the applique fabric right side down on top, and I'm giving it a jolly good press. Be careful you don't stretch anything though, because you don't want it to look puckered and bubbled. Now in an ideal perfect world, I'm just going to take the paper off, you would leave this overnight before you stitch it. Let it set, let it get kind of stuck down. It is temporary adhesive, so it will peel off if you needed it to, but it's better to let it really sort of stick down. It helps to stop the stretching, any stretching that might happen. But you know, I haven't got all night to wait for this, so I'm going to start stitching. Now I'm going to start stitching from doing these bottom, I don't know if you can see that because it's quite dark, doing these bottom areas, and I am literally going to stitch all the way around the outside, 1/8 of an inch away from the very edge of the cutout. I haven't changed my stitch length. I've got nice long threads at the beginning on top and bottom, and I'm just going to stitch that way very carefully, stitching all the way around, staying approximately 1/8 of an inch from the edge. What you need to be careful of is that you stay 1/8 of an inch from the edge. You don't want to fall off the precipice, so to speak. I'll do this again. I'll do this bottom fan. You don't really want to see me doing the entire thing because that's just boring. Try and land back in the hole that you started with, and again pull your work out, leaving long threads at the beginning and the end, using your self-threading needle to take your threads from the front of your work, oops, not happening, from the front of your work through to the reverse of your work, and again tie those threads off. So a couple of nice knots in there, and remove them. So that's, I don't know if you can even see that because this is such a dark fabric. I hadn't actually thought about that. But you can see that that's stitched all the way around. And I'm going to continue to do that with each of those sections. What I won't do is these little tiny bits, these little accent pieces. I don't stitch around those. It's too much like hard work. If you really want to, you feel free. It's just not my thing. But I am going to go around each and every other part 1/8 of an inch away from the very edge. Each time I finished going round one of these openings, one of these apertures that we've created, I will raise the foot, pull my work out, and bury those threads. If you leave it until you've got 2 or 3 lots of threads to bury, what will happen is you'll end up stitching over the long ends on the back, and it will all end up as a big mess. So it's much easier to do each one as you do it. You will become an expert at tying off your threads. Anybody that did the Sigma wallet and thought that they'd done a lot of tying off with that, you ain't seen nothing yet. Anybody that did the carpet bag, you know where we're going with this because it's much the same technique. So again, all the way around, take it slowly. If you go too fast, not only are you going to overshoot, you may well fall off the edge of the precipice, but you'll also find that your faux leather will stretch more if you go fast, and I don't know why that happens. There's no scientific reason for it, but it does. Now this bottom fan is actually not too difficult to do because there aren't long areas of thin pieces that you're going to be stitching down. So I will actually do one of the others to show you. About stitching down in between the design. I think this is very much dependent on how confident you are that you can actually stitch. Right, I'll finish doing that bottom fan in a moment. I'm going to go over here and do this end one. So I'm going to start. I always start at one end and I work my way across because I find that that's just the easiest way for me to work. So I'm going to come up the inside here of between the first and second fan, if you like. Then I'm going across the top. And down the other side. There's my foot. And just bury my thread. So that's my first panel on one of my one of the bigger fans done. And this is where you'll have just a couple of options. It might be easier for me to show you on the paper pattern where it's black and white, so therefore easier to see. Let me see. Right, so what I've done is I've sewn all the way around this aperture, but you can see this black area between the two is actually very, very narrow. So when I come to sew around this aperture, it'll come to a point where I'm almost effectively stitching on top of the stitching that I did for this one. So what I'll do is I will come down this side until I get to the point where there's already stitching, and that's where I bury my threads. So I'm not actually going to stitch all the way around this second one. I'm going to stitch from the point where the stitching kind of meets, if you like, up here, around the top and down and across the bottom. And I'll do exactly the same when I come to the third one, in so much as there'll be an area, so about here, where if I did stitch back all the way around both of them, the stitching would actually be one on the top of the other, so I'll effectively start my stitching just about the point where the two lines would actually normally meet. So I think that shows it easier. I am going to do the next line of stitching just to kind of show you. But I'm not starting right at the bottom because my stitching is already there. It really depends on how closely you can actually stick to the 1/8 of an inch from the very edge. Now, if you don't stick to the 1/8 of an inch from the very edge, it's perfectly doable. However, what you end up with is a lip of raw faux leather that will catch on things, and eventually it becomes untidy and tatty. I've got a bag that I did applique on probably 2.5 years ago that I use quite regularly, the one with my sewing shop on it. Maybe it wasn't 2.5 years, maybe it was a year ago, but I use it quite regularly, and that's all got 1/8 of an inch applique, and it hasn't curled up around the outsides. My daughter has a bag that I made for her with applique on it that has a flower shop on it, and that hasn't curled up. So sticking to the 1/8 of an inch from the very edge will mean that your faux leather is very nicely secured to its backing, or the faux leather that you're using for your main front panel. So there we go. I haven't gone all the way around the outside because I need to just get I have stitched over that. And I can't put both of my threads through at the same time because my start and finish point now are slightly different to each other, because I've not actually gone all the way around, so I have to put them through separately. But again, the same principle applies. You just tie off the ends. So I've got 2 there. Tie off your threads on the back and trim them off. let go of it. Tie off the threads on the back and trim them off. And then the same with the other ones. And you're just going to keep going. So you're just going to keep going around each and every part of that design until you've stitched it all down. This wasn't my finest choice of colours for the videos because it doesn't show so well because it is dark, but you can see by the photographs, and I will put some photographs of some of the other ones that I've done that I haven't actually finished, that have lighter coloured stitching, so you get a better idea of exactly how the stitching is done. Now I'm going to go and find some faux leather to use on the back of my other design because I, for some reason, have omitted to get any, and I'll be back to you and show you how to do that one.